My name is Brandon Hartung, and I'm a media missionary who travels the world using photography and video to tell the stories of impact those missionaries and ministries are having and inviting others to join in those efforts. Today's episode is sponsored by Gospel Lighthouse Church in Blytheville, Arkansas. Services are every Sunday and Wednesday. You can join a service in person or online on YouTube, Facebook, or check out myglc.org. Gospel Lighthouse Church. People are our greatest investment. On today's episode of the Mission Field Media Podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Toby Avery, who, with his wife Michelle, are pastoring a new church plant just south of London, and they've been involved with missions in different parts of the world, and just wonderful people. They're also the directors of Rhema UK, so they are overseeing Bible schools in multiple countries there in the UK. And they just have an amazing story. Their church started just before COVID hit, so they immediately were faced with some crazy challenges and also have some crazy God stories from that time of just being obedient in a time that they didn't know what was happening around them. So I am so excited to introduce Toby to you, and let's get right into the interview. All right, well, we are joined here today with Toby Avery, live from the UK, south of London there. And Toby, just tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing over there in the UK.
Well, hey, Brandon, it's great to be on the podcast today, and thank you for having me, first of all. But we're just south of London. We live just south of London. We, Michelle, my wife, and I, we have planted a church not too long ago in South London, and so we're really excited about the UK. I don't know what you want me to say, Brandon. I'm just going up here.
I'm just thinking for all the people that don't know you yet, just tell them a little about. I didn't even know you until probably a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago,
3 years ago, maybe. I don't know.
In there, but yeah, met you guys in person and just immediately clicked and loved you guys hard and obviously love laughing about all the random silliness of life. But
absolutely,
and you guys just have a heart and passion for missions and I was actually supposed to be in there in London with you guys this week, but we're doing it online instead, which is fine. Well, we're going to make it there at some point, but love what you guys are doing in that area and planting a church, which I think missions people can relate to that. That happens all over the world. And directing Rhema UK, which for people in the States, UK is 4 countries, right?
Yes, 4 countries. England.
Yeah, they're just kind of like
Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland.
There you go. So that's always confusing for us people in the States. But
otherwise known as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to keep you on your toes.
The UK is so much simpler. So those are things that we need a whole podcast to break down all of that.
Oh yeah, and don't even get into the Northern Irish versus the Republic of Ireland
and Northern Ireland aren't the same. So that's a whole nother history lesson. But
absolutely.
Beautiful countries, and you're directing Rhema UK over there, which is cool. So yeah, just explain a little bit about what you guys are doing with that and what it's like. I guess, I mean, you have enough experience coming to the States, and you went to school here, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of explain, like, to Americans and anybody else that might be listening to this podcast. But I think Americans don't really understand Europe and the UK and just kind of the spiritual temperature there compared to here.
Yeah.
Tell us some big differences that you're seeing over there.
It sure is a bit different. Just as an example, Michelle and I were in we were in the States in February and March, and we drove across from Atlanta through to Oklahoma, so through a few southern states, and just walk in a restaurant and someone says bless you, in passing, people are polite. I mean, it's not quite like that in London. It's a bit more like New York or something, I guess. It's just a whole different atmosphere, both in the natural and in the sort of spiritual kind of climate. And I mean, just to give you a bit of context, I think I saw some stats recently that the US has has around 35% of the US population are evangelical Christians. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but that's nearly a third of the US population, being evangelical according to those stats. Europe as a whole is around 2% evangelical, and the UK is about 3% evangelical Christian. Church attendance is, people who attend church regularly is about 5%. So, it's a very different world in the UK and Europe as a whole than it is in the US. I remember when I first, I came to Bible college in the US in the mid-90s, and I remember, the first time I walked into like a Walmart or somewhere and I saw a Christian book on a bookshelf, being sold in the store. Absolutely unheard of in the UK. You had to hunt to find a store that sold Christian books. So it's a very, and it's moved on since then. It's a bit better, but it's and the internet and access to Amazon and these kinds of things has made access to Christian materials a lot better. But church attendance as a whole is declining. I think you probably find from the things I've seen that the churches that are growing in the UK typically are your black churches, your more Pentecostal, more charismatic and evangelical kind of churches are the ones that are growing. Your denominational churches are declining massively. From what we can kind of see. Now, that doesn't mean it's all bad. There's some really great stuff happening, but just as a sort of comparator to the US and particularly to the South and the Bible Belt and those kind of areas, it's a very, very different spiritual atmosphere in the UK. And I think that's why. Well, actually, just another stat I read just today. Actually, the Joshua Project. If you've ever seen any of their stats, they're pretty good. Europe, according to them, Europe has a lower percentage of evangelical Christians than any other continent in the world. And if you think about that for a second, the US sends, the US has historically been one of the best mission sending countries in the world. Provides some of the most amount of financial support around the world. But where do most missionaries from the US go? You'll go to Africa, you go to India, you go to Asia. It's these kind of places. And don't get me wrong, it's needed. But actually, when you think about the fact that Europe has a lower percentage of evangelical Christians than any other continent in the world, how much does Europe need missions and missionaries as well? And I think that's why Michelle and I we feel really strongly called to the UK and to Ireland. We believe that God is doing something and preparing to do something in these lands that can impact the world. Historically, we have been a missions nation. We have been a nation that has taken Christianity around the world. Now, we've declined a lot since the Second World War. Christianity has really declined in the UK since the Second World War. But what has happened in the UK is we've had significant amounts of immigration. So you walk around the streets of London and you find Africans, you find Caribbeans, you find Americans, you find South Americans, North Americans, you find Australians, you find Asians, everyone, London is like the center of the universe in a way. You walk down the street, you hear Polish, you hear Ukrainian, you hear Chinese, Mandarin, you hear all sorts of different languages, nations. And I think there's something about that when we see revival here, and we see these groups of individuals saved, they have the power to go back to where they've come from, whether that's permanently or temporarily, but to take the gospel in a language in their language back to their home nations, and that's hugely powerful. And you're starting to see that happen in different places. So I'm excited about the African churches, and the West Indian churches, rising up, and we've got some pretty big, very impactful, African West Indian churches in London, and that excites me because because we've sown in the past as a nation into Africa or wherever, now Africa's sowing into us, and we've got to learn from that. We've got to grab hold of the passion and the fire you see in some of these churches, and see revival in the UK and in Ireland, and that's kind of why Michelle and I are here. We feel passionately about this part of the world. We feel like we're home missionaries. We're born here, we're nationals, but we feel like we're missionaries, if you like, to the UK, to our home nation, because it is a mission field. The harvest is, the fields are white and ripe unto harvest. Jesus said, "Pray laborers go forth into the harvest fields," and we want to be those laborers into this nation in an impactful way, and make a difference. People here need Jesus. COVID has done a number on all of us, I guess, but you're seeing it more and more since COVID, that the heart's cry for something. People are looking for something. They're in fear, they're in doubt, all this stuff is going on, wars and rumors of wars around the world, and you've got protests, and everyone's jumping up and down about something, and it's because they're looking for something, and all those things that they're jumping up and down about are not going to fill that Jesus-shaped hole in their hearts. We need to get out there and we need to preach the gospel to them, and that's one of the reasons Michelle and I we believe in the principle of church planting and the importance of church planting. We teach through Rhema, the work we do with Rhema, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute if you like. But the work we do there, we use a curriculum from an organization, a US-based organization called Dynamic Church Planting International, or DCPI, and they talk about how the most effective mechanism for evangelism statistically today is not the large crusade, it's the local church. And if the local church can be the most effective evangelistic organization, and it can be the place where we disciple people, and get them into a great relationship with God, we need to leverage the local church, and that means we need more local church. We need more strong and healthy local churches that are both being evangelistic, but also they're building their people, they're discipling their people. So when we planted our church, which is called His Life Church, God gave us this sort of vision or strap line kind of statement. He said, build His church to reach the nations. And that's our goal, is through all we do really is to build the church of God so that the nations can be reached and disciples can be made. We're blessed. God's done. It's early days for us, but God's done some great things in the church. I can tell a couple of stories if you like, but okay. Well, let's talk about the starting. So we started our Sunday services. This always makes me laugh. So I say we're very new, but we actually started our Sunday services in January 2020.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? I mean, who knew? Wow. We've been praying, and we've been meeting with a group of people for probably a year or so before that in the community that we felt we were supposed to start in. God had been really good, to be honest. We didn't really know anyone in that community at all. We felt we should start there. And through another pastor, actually, God connected us with this lady who just opened up her home to us to hold Friday night sort of prayer meetings and teaching sessions and fellowship sessions on a Friday night. And then we felt really strongly about November 2019 that we were to start Sunday services in January 2020. We didn't really know why. It suddenly felt like a bit of a rush. We needed to kind of do it, but we felt we needed to do it, and so we took steps. We found a venue. We hired a venue. All those kinds of things. Got some signage. Bought a sound system. All those kinds of things that you need to do, and in the background, we were starting to do the legal stuff that you got to do in the UK to start a church. So most churches, it's not a legal requirement, but most churches in the UK are registered charities. That's a bit like your 501c3 kind of thing in the US. And you've got to go through a bit of a process to get that charity registration. So we kicked that off. And as I say, we launched on the 19th of January, 2020. A few weeks later, I came out to the States for a couple of weeks to attend a conference at Rhema and do some meetings out there in Oklahoma. And I hadn't heard of COVID at that point in time. I I landed back in the UK, went back to my work. I work in a health. Been working for years in healthcare for a secular role that I do, and went back, and suddenly everyone's talking about COVID, and they're all talking about lockdown, and we think we're going to have to lock down. We might have to lock down. What do we do if we lock down? Everyone's going to have to work from home, and all this kind of stuff. And about 2 weeks later, we've locked down. The whole country is kind of shut down. I think it was the 24th of March, 2020. The UK went into lockdown. We'd had 7 Sunday services at that point in time, and suddenly we're locked down. and I'm like, we just started, Lord. Yeah, what's going on, Lord? We thought you said starting January 2020. You must, all things. You must have known that 7 weeks later this lockdown thing was going to happen. And like everyone else, I guess we just thought it was going to last a month or 2 months or something, and then we'd be back to normal. But for us, lockdown it lasted a lot longer. I know in some parts of the US it was a bit longer, in some parts of the US it was quite short and not as severe. In the UK it was pretty severe. They didn't want you traveling more than a few miles at different points in time. Loads of rules and regulations, masks, and all that kind of stuff we all went through. And but it was I think we did 3 lockdowns in the UK over sort of an 18-month or so period. And if you had a church building, if you were an established church and you owned a church building, there were ways you could go back into church, with the social distancing and all this kind of stuff. If you were not in your own church building, if you were trying to rent a venue, it was almost impossible because the venues were not renting to you. Yeah. So I think between March 2020, when we went into lockdown, and January 2022, I think we managed to get together 3 times, maybe 4 times as a group in person. One of those times was in our garden. One of those times we managed to rent a venue, and these kinds of things. So it was crazy. We couldn't restart church for 2 years. In the end. And that whole time we're going, but Lord, why did you get us to start in 2020? We went online and we did what everyone else did. We had service online, and praise God, I don't think we lost any people by moving online. We were a small launch team. We weren't huge anyway. I think we gained a couple of people. We had people from actually Northern Ireland, joining our services and our Zoom calls and things for a long time. Someone else from the Isle of Man, which is a little island off the coast, northern England somewhere, a tiny little place. So we had some people coming in from different places that would never have come to a physical service, but we were like, Lord, why? In the meantime, we kind of went through that process. We got registered as a charity. It took us 18 months to get a bank account opened because of COVID. Almost all of the banks were not opening accounts, business accounts or charity accounts during that period. They just stopped doing stuff. So you'd contact them and it would be like nothing for a month, just no response. We eventually found a bank that would open an account for us, and we had to jump through about 1 million hoops to get it to happen because you couldn't go anywhere in person, all this kind of stuff. So it just took ages. But where this was, if you like, supernatural, where you kind of look back and go, that's why we had to start in January 2020. What we didn't know was that some friends, and actually our pastors at the time before we launched the church, had felt called. They're from the US, and they had a church in London, and they felt called to go back to the US. And they'd been offered a role back in the US. And so all of a sudden, they were like, what do we do with our church? And they felt on their hearts to approach us and ask if we'd like to merge their church into our church. And so that's, we prayed about it and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we ended up doing. And when we relaunched in January 2022, we relaunched and spent 2 months or so merging the churches and bringing the 2 churches together from quite different parts of London. And the amazing thing there was that because of COVID and a variety of other things, they'd actually managed to save quite a lot of money during that period. And if we hadn't had the charity set up and if we hadn't had the bank account in place, we wouldn't have been able to take the funds that they wanted to transfer over to us. And the number of other logistical things that having the charity in place and having the bank account in place and having the board in place and all these sorts of things enabled us to do that would have been really, really hard if we hadn't had that in place already. And so while we might have only had 7 services, what we did over that 2-year period was establish a really strong DNA in our church. Now, we might not have met in person many times, but we were able to get the culture, the values of how we want to do church embedded in our core team. We got to that position where we're able to receive those funds. So we are in a really, really healthy financial position with a good set of reserves in the bank to support us, that we believe God is going to use to help us purchase a building at some point in the future. And we're just in a really strong position as a church. We're still not very big. We maybe got 35 regular people. Some people wouldn't even call that a church, but we've got 35 really strong people who come together on a regular basis to worship God, to preach the gospel, to go into the community, to learn, to disciple together, and to make an impact on the community that we're in. And
I think about
sorry, I'm talking a lot here.
Yeah, you're good.
Letting you get a word in.
No, you're good. I love hearing it. My brain was thinking about when you're talking about that time where you're just kind of like, what are we doing? And I was thinking of like a construction project. When they start a big building, you have to do all the groundwork and figure out the foundation. And the higher up you go, means the deeper you got to go. And that means a longer time. Like if you're just driving by every day or once a week or whatever, you're like, oh, what is going on over there? There's nothing happening. But really, there's all this work that's going into the foundation to prepare that foundation to hold whatever's going to go on top of it. Because without it, it would just fall apart, So that's what my brain thinks when I'm hearing you talk about this stuff is, all this foundation work. And on the outside, if you're just looking at it at a glance, you're like, man, it doesn't feel like it's moving. But really, God was preparing that foundation for you guys to be able to merge with the other church and be able to receive funds and do all these things to really launch you once you get that foundation leveled off.
Absolutely. And that's just so God, isn't it? He gives you the picture, the bit of the puzzle that you need. If he'd have told us that 2 years in advance, we'd have probably gone and run away. It would have been scary or something. But he tells you, and I think that's the amazing thing with God is that he told Abraham way back when in Genesis, leave your country and go to a land which I will show you. Now, he didn't say where to go. He just said go.
Yeah.
Right? He said, I'm going to show you the land. I haven't shown you the land yet, but I want you to start going. You and me, we're like, no, you need to tell us where to go. I've got to book the plane tickets. I can't book plane tickets to nowhere. I need to book the plane tickets to somewhere. We want to know the detail, right? But Abraham was like, okay, God, you said go. I'll go. And he packed up his stuff and walked. And what happened when he went, God provided. God made a way. God opened doors. God gave him favor. God increased him. And he does that for us. God hasn't changed. He does that for us. But we've got to go. We've got to start that church in January because he said start the church in January. And it's interesting. You haven't asked, but I'm going to tell you anyway. We're in a new season now, or about to enter a new season. So for me personally, I think I mentioned earlier on that I work a secular role and have been doing that for a long time. I work for a healthcare organization, and I've been doing that to help support us while we do all the ministry work that we do. But over the last couple of years, the ministry work has been increasing, and you get to a stage where you can't do both or not do it healthily.
Only so many hours in a day, that's for sure.
Exactly, and only so much caffeine to keep me awake. But we've been knowing that the Lord was kind of getting us ready to transition out of that full-time secular employment, and And we've hit that point now. So I handed my notice in a few months ago. I'm on a three-month notice period. So next week, actually, excitingly enough, at the end of April, I finish my secular employment. But it's a new season, and it's a step of faith, because suddenly I go from having a very secure, very well paid job with responsibility, staff, team. I have a personal assistant. It's awesome. And I'm sitting there. I was saying to her the other day, I don't know what I'm going to do without you, because I can't take you with me.
Yeah. You're like, Michelle, you're my personal assistant.
Yeah, exactly. She's going to like, no, you can manage your own diary, Toby. You can manage your own calendar. I'm not doing that for you. So suddenly I'm losing all this stuff, stepping away from the security, stepping away from the financial security, and the just from a psychological perspective, you're invested in that thing. I know that I'm good at what I do. There's all those sorts of things tied up to that, but God said go. And it's a new season, so we're going, and we're so excited about this next season, and having the opportunity for more ministry and to just have more energy to do what God's called us to do, and really step up the game in terms of the church and the work that we do with Rhema. But literally, I mean, I finished work on the Wednesday, and we're flying to Ireland for a ministry trip, or Northern Ireland, should I say, for a ministry trip on Thursday. So, and then I'm away again a couple of weeks after that. So it's literally go.
Hit the ground running,
hit the ground running. And God's opening doors. There's so much going on this summer from a ministry perspective. God's just opening the doors, and I know He'll, our security is in Him. It's not in the job, right? I know you've been through this as well, Brandon. So we have to trust God, and when He says go, we have to go. I was telling our church last Sunday, we're safer, we are in a better place, we are more secure in the will of God on a battlefield than we are out of the will of God in our hometown.
Yep.
Anything
can happen.
Anything can happen. I could get hit by a car walking out of my drive tomorrow morning, if I'm out of the will of God. But if I'm in the will of God, if I'm where God wants me to be, I can be in the middle of a war zone, and He'll look after me, He'll protect me, He'll provide for me. And and that's what we've got to do as Christians, isn't it? We've got to, it doesn't matter whether we're ministers or what we are. We've just got to seek to do the will of God in our lives. We've got to try and find what is it He wants me to do. Where does He want me to be doing it? When does He want me to be doing it? What does He want me to say? How does He want me to do it? That should be our heart's cry, because He's got something for each one of us to do. And for me and Michelle, it's pastoring a church, it's leading Rhema, it's teaching, it's teaching the Word of God, it's raising up church planters and ministers and that kind of stuff. For you, it's media missions, it's getting out there, it's telling the stories, it's but you know what, for years I was working a secular job. I was still preaching 100 and something times a year, working a full-time secular job. Just because I'm in a secular role doesn't mean I can't still make an impact for God.
Right.
Actually, I can make an impact for God in my workplace. The number of times I don't drink. I don't know what it's like in your part of the US, but in the UK most Christians drink. I don't drink. I haven't drunk since forever, kind of thing. But that's noticed at work. So when you go out for after works for a social event or something, and you're not drinking, you're not knocking back a beer or whatever, that gets noticed. I don't know if it would in the US, but it certainly does in the UK. Yeah. And that's instantly an opener for a conversation. Well, why don't you drink, Toby? Well, and I didn't stop drinking for super religious reasons per se, but I stopped drinking, and I can tell a story about that, and I can talk about Jesus through that, and I can set an example through that. I can be salt and light, and it's an opportunity to open a door, and that's not because I'm a minister. It's because I'm a Christian. It's because I'm a disciple of Jesus, and we can make a difference. And I'm kind of going on a bit now, and I'm not letting you.
Yeah, you're right. No, I love it. I love it. Well, that really is it's the heart behind what you're saying. I mean, it's missions everywhere. Is be prepared at all times, in season and out, as the word says, and just stepping back and realizing that everywhere you go is a mission field and an opportunity. Where we work or at our hometown or in the middle of Africa or in the middle of London or wherever. it's always an opportunity to share the
Absolutely.
good news, and
Absolutely.
it's just so funny. It feels like easier when you go on a short-term missions trip or something and you get out of your comfort zone. You see it everywhere. It's like, oh, when you're trying to focus on seeing it, then you see it. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. But so many people, it's easy just get in you're just doing everyday life and doing your routine and paying your bills and doing all that, and you don't even see people when you walk past them in a park or at work. You're just trying to survive, get to the weekend. But the opportunities are everywhere if you just look for them. Just be thinking it in your head, like I'm on a mission field and I want to help people and share the good news. That's really the gospel is the good news, and like
Absolutely.
if people need it. People need to hear good news, man. It's a lot of bad news out there.
Sure. I mean, didn't Jesus say, he said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. But then when in Acts chapter 1, he then speaks to the disciples, and he says, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. And I always think it's fascinating. He said Jerusalem. Where were they? Their hometown. You got to preach the gospel. Jerusalem is a mission field, right? Judea next door is a mission field. Samaria, the people you don't really like, they're a mission field. And then go into the whole world. Then go everywhere else. And if you can't preach the gospel in your hometown, your neighboring town, or to the people you don't like, how are you ever going to go into the whole world?
Boy, I don't know how politics are in the UK, but in the States, people you don't like is very polarizing right now. I'm sure probably for all time, but even without politics, everybody has people they just don't prefer. Let's put it that way. But especially it feels like political right now, just so heated, but if you look through the lens of, hey, those just as much as me, and B, he wants me to love them and share the good news with them. So what do I need to do to be able to do that? That really is a big self-reflection of,
Absolutely.
okay, there's a scripture, and you may know it off the top of your head, but basically, like, if you love the people that are easy to love, like, what good is that? How anybody can do that. A sinner can do that. The people that are easy to love, anybody can do that. So if we're gonna go to a higher standard, then it's gonna be challenging,
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it was and that caused you to look at me and go, there's something different about Toby. And what is that? And I want to find out what that is. And when you do that, with like the not drinking thing, that then can be a door of opportunity for me to preach the gospel, to tell them that God loves them, that Jesus came to save them, that God wants to heal them or set them free or whatever it is. What's the good news that they need to hear? God's good, and He'll use you wherever you are, and I think that's what we forget. And we think we've got to go to the mission field, or we've got to be in a church service, or we've got to be somewhere religious to do something for God. But God wants to use you, like you said, Brandon, on the street, in your community, wherever you are, Walmart. He wants to use you in Asda, which is our equivalent of Walmart over here. He wants to use you on the buses, on the trains, on the planes. He wants to use you in the colleges and the schools. Wherever you go, you're meant to be salt and you're meant to be light. And He's got something that you can do. You are empowered to reach people as a believer.
Yeah. And just always thinking about a story that you kind of told me before, but I want you to expound on it. But just the unexpected, you just never know who you're going to come across, and how they're going to impact you in the future, right? Like there was a lady in your church that really had no idea that she would even be in church, much less be a part of your church.
Oh, yes, Nadia.
Yeah, so tell us about Nadia.
So this is, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I guess. So relatively recently. And we're believing obviously for people to come into the church and trying to impact the community and stuff, but we don't know the community that well. It's not where we live. We felt to plant a church a little bit away from where we actually live, and And so this lady rocks up in service one day, a little bit late. We didn't know her. It's great, so we were all excited. And we got talking to her after the service, and she tells us this story. And she says she's been going to a church which she loves for a long time, but God had told her that she needed to. He had something else for her, and so she was trying to work out where that something else was. So she'd been visiting a few churches here and there just to test them out and see. And she'd seen our church on the internet at some point, doing the, as we all do these days, we Google, right? We try and find something,
Mm-hmm.
Google it. She'd seen our church come up, but she'd not really thought anything of it. I certainly hadn't attended it before. And that morning, I think she was going back to her home church kind of thing that morning. But she said, I was on the bus and I know exactly where I'm going, but I missed the stop. And so South London, well, most of London, people travel a lot by public transport, and she was on the public bus, and she missed the stop, and she was like, Lord, I'm never going to get back now. She'd missed it bad. She hadn't just missed it like by 2 minutes. She'd kind of
Just daydreaming.
yeah. So she's like, I'm not going to get back in time for service at the church. If I jump off and get on another bus for back, what shall I do? And something in her nudged her to jump on her phone and look up, try and find our church. It came back to her mind, and she Googled it. She found it. She realized that where she was literally just down the street from where we were meeting, and she rocked up just a few minutes late. But that's the sort of thing, and that's God. So now, a year and a half later or whatever, she's been serving on our hospitality team. She's just recently joined our worship team, and she's embedded in the church. She's brought strength to the church. She's brought gifts and talents to the church that we needed. God's good. He's got a time and a place for all of us, and he will connect the right people if they're open, with the right time and the right place and the right people, and wherever you are, he'll get you where you need to be if you are open to him and open to change. I think sometimes praying, just,
and lead our footsteps, right? Even though exactly. I felt like I was supposed to be there right now for whatever reason. We just believe in God's timing, for everything. If you miss a bus stop and wind up right exactly where you're supposed to be,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what your transition to, out of that stable environment, like you said. I did that about 12 years ago. I used to work for the news, and knew this calling was on my heart, and had already had the light bulb moment of what I was supposed to do, and had another opportunity that I was denied because I was still working my corporate job and couldn't leave. And when I felt like I was supposed to be on the mission field and doing these things, and I was at work at a normal job, and that whole week that I was supposed to be gone and doing this, it just burned inside of me, inside my bones, oh my gosh, I just can't. I should be there. What am I doing? And boy, it was immediately you just something you knew inside that I can't keep doing this the way I've been doing it, because I have, although it's challenging and scary to take the first step out, and definitely you want your wife's support in that. But taking that step has allowed me the opportunity to be able to do stuff like this, and like you said, it already takes a lot of time to do all this. There's just not enough hours in the day and days in the week to do it all. So at some point, we use a term in the States, which I don't know if you've heard it before, called "burn the ships." When the Pilgrims came here, eventually there was a point where they said we have to cut off the access, the ability to choose to run away, because that's going to take us to another level of, okay, we're here now, it's for real, and we're going to survive or die doing this, because this is what we feel like we're supposed to be doing.
Do or die.
Yeah. So that's commendable, and I'm excited and praying for you and the next step in your journey, which I have zero doubts is going to be amazing. Although I'm sure there'll be challenges and everything else, but that's life and that's ministry. And like you said, sometimes it's not God doesn't give you the whole path, like the end destination. He just lights up that next step in front of you. So it's like, what do? Just take the next step. And if you really trust God, something that's always challenging me. We both fly quite a bit, and for people that don't or maybe haven't thought about this, like how easily we walk on that plane and just trust a pilot that is going to get us to where we need to go. We've never met them. You just believe that they have the ability to do it, and that they're going to do it safely, and they're going to land where they say you're going to land and where you need to be going. And if we can put that much trust in a guy that we don't even know, never met, or lady. There's a lot of lady pilots nowadays. So, but if we can so easily give that amount of trust to a pilot, how can we not trust the one we say is God and the we say we have given our whole life to, and we trust with everything?
Absolutely. And it is funny that you say that. Wouldn't it be easy for a pilot to just kidnap a whole plane? I mean, you could take 200 people. Until you landed, they wouldn't have a clue that they were in the wrong place.
Right.
You just turn off the entertainment system. They can't see where they're going, and it would be so easy. And like you say, we trust these individuals, and obviously, we trust that the airlines done the right security checks and everything else on their pilot.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do. We put so much faith in someone that we don't even see. Most of the time, you don't even see the pilot these days, do you?
Yeah.
So, and yet Jesus, the one who lives on the inside of us, do we put as much trust and faith in him?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm gonna get you out of here because I know you got a super busy schedule, but I wanted to just say thanks again for joining us this time on this podcast. Hopefully we'll get to do one live and in person next time. That'd be awesome. And then I also wanted to say I love your style of hat choice there. It just shows how much American influence you had. And
well, Brandon, I thought I'm meeting with you. It's got to come out. It's
go Hogs, right?
Go Hogs.
But it also means
I think I've got a Kentucky one around here somewhere, but I didn't think you'd like that one so much.
Yeah. And we just hired their coach, which is a whole nother thing. That's a whole different podcast. But I was gonna also mention that hat means you're good at long suffering and patience and. But like anything, you love people more than winning. So
yeah,
just kidding.
Absolutely. People before winning.
Yeah, exactly. But so it's been a joy. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, and we became like instant friends when we met, and you and your wife, and me and Kristen and my wife. Just love you guys and your heart for people. And of course, anybody's interested, there's an accent challenge we did that's floating around the internet somewhere. We did British versus the Southern American accent, and it was really a funny time.
And the Brits won, definitely.
Yeah, I believe from the comments, I believe that was right, but I don't know if I believe it, but I believe that's what the people voted. So you definitely have a cooler sounding accent for sure, but
I don't know.
But.
Not sure. I don't know. So I don't think I have an accent. So there you go.
Well, get some water and make sure you stay hydrated. So hopefully it's still morning time here, so I'm gonna go get some beans and toast and finish off my morning. But I just wanted to again say thank you for joining the podcast, and I'm looking forward to seeing what God's got planned for you guys, and hopefully being a part of it in even a small way, because I just love what you guys are doing in your heart.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great talking to you, and I'm so excited about what God's doing through Mission Field Media. I'm looking forward to seeing you in different parts of the world again very soon.
Yeah, maybe we'll meet up and be out somewhere together.
That sounds like a plan.
Thanks again for joining us on the Mission Field Media podcast. We so appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen. for what God is doing all around the world through all these missionaries and ministries. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and find us on the social media apps and follow us there as well. Tell all your friends about it. We couldn't do any of this without the listeners like yourself and our sponsors. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you join us again on the Mission Field Media Podcast.